You're listening to Discography Discussion, episode 167, Taproot, with Melissa from Good Evening Kiddies.
It's called the Good Evening Kiddies podcast, Joe. Get it right.
Ooh, that's perfect.
Hosted by Dan Terry.
I just got invited to a private group called Zayo is the greatest metalcore band of all time.
Okay.
Yeah. That's what we do.
Jeff Kane.
Hi.
And Joseph Wren. Hey, Mike has produced some of the most stanky smells in the history of all existence. But
True
they
that.
end up being some of the most delicious beer you'll ever have. Presented by discussmetal.com. And if your gift to pop music was a poem you wrote to the man you saw in the mirror, then you are ready for this episode of Discography Discussion. I am Joe. That is Dan. That is Jeff. Melissa is here from the Good Evening Kiddies podcast.
Giggity.
Oh, giggity. We are right into New Metal May, guys.
It's back.
No, I don't know if it's back by popular demand, but it's back. You know,
why did I keep going to a Backstreet Boys song when I hear Backstreet's back? All right, that's what keeps going through my head when you say that.
Get out of my house, Jeff.
It's back. It's back. Yeah, keep your social distancing.
It was a sweet music video, though.
I hope that when May actually hits, like that will actually be a funny joke. I do think, a little peek behind the curtain, kids. But yeah, I love doing New Metal May every year. We do it in honor of the Roach Coach podcast, who's wading through this crap every week, and we only do it for 4 weeks out of the year. So we're kind of like part-time employees in the new metal stuff. But Taproot's a band that we've been wanting to talk about for a long time. We've just never gotten around to it. We've even had Jared Montague, formerly of Taproot, on the show to talk about Metallica and then a lot about Taproot, and that was a lot of fun. And I wanted to do the episode right after that, but we just didn't for some reason. There were too many mellow death bands out there that we had to get through first.
If you're going to talk about Taproot, why not open New Metal May with the band that wrote what is critically the number one nu metal song of all time? In my opinion, they are by no means the greatest nu metal band, but who wrote the number one single?
Drowning Pool with Bodies.
Well, that's the top single in your eyes. But in the eyes of the general populace, I mean, Poem's number one.
Controversial statement. I think everybody knows Poem by Taproot and probably doesn't know that it was written by Taproot.
I mean, I would hope it would have been.
No, I mean, it was. I'm just saying that, like, I think that I don't know. There's a lot bigger singles than Poem. Poem's like a rock radio single. It's not really a nu metal single. A nu metal single is like Korn's Blind or Slipknot's Wait and Bleed or, something along those lines.
Yeah, you're talking about the more metal side of nu metal, not the rock radio friendly side of
the
nu
butt
metal.
rock side. You can say it.
The rhythm guitar driven riffage of Drop D.
So yeah, so I kind of understand what Joe is saying. I think Poem, if you were to play it for the masses, even if they don't know who the band is, there's a good chance they're going to know the song. But I will say, because of all the popularity that has been drummed back up with all of these talent shows with Bodies by Drowning Pool, that's probably even more popular. Just because it's an entire new generation that got to listen to that geriatric metal guy sing Bodies. He's like, the dude's like 80 something on those, I guess was American Idol or America's Got Talent. It was one of those, and he's singing Bodies. And it was all over the internet, all over the news. It was like a year and a half ago.
Right, because it's hilarious when an old person does something that's not old, right?
Yeah, so essentially,
it's pretty old.
Yeah, I mean, well, when you have somebody doing something, because if he was doing it from his heyday, it would be from like the 50s, and he's doing something from the late 90s, early 2000s, so that's why people had fun with it. But I think Bodies is probably the quintessential song just because of how popular it has become with a new generation. That being said, I prefer Poem to Bodies personally, and Poem's not even in my top 5 songs by Taproot, actually.
Well, my grandpa just started listening to Metallica like last year. That's pretty cool, right?
Better late than never.
Hey guys, Melissa's here.
Hi, y'all.
In case you guys didn't know, Melissa hosts a podcast called the Good Evening Kiddies podcast.
That's right.
A Tales from the Crypt review, even though you're almost like at the end, right?
I'm in season 5. There's 7 seasons.
Okay.
So I still have 2 more movies and then, whatever episode, like 30 more episodes or something.
So you have to still do your long road home and plead the fifth.
Yeah, I still have to do those. Yeah.
Got it.
There's not much road though right now. We're all stuck at home, so.
That's true.
You could bust out those Tales from the Crypt Keeper episodes.
Oh, I don't know. I don't even know if I could find them. Are they on YouTube?
I'm sure they are. They're really simple too, because it's animated TV show for Saturday morning with the Crypt Keeper.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how far I get on these. I also do horror movie reviews, so that'll take up some time too.
Yeah, it sucked.
Yeah, it's your fault that I watched The Killer Pinata. Just saying.
That wasn't for my reviews. That was. Oh yeah, was that for my reviews? No, I think I just told you that because I watched it and I'm like, this movie is ridiculous. So hey, Joe, did you enjoy it? I mean, no. I mean, the second half's pretty bad.
I enjoyed it, but not for the reason that most people tend to enjoy movies, as I have been known to enjoy ridiculous, over-the-top, low-budget shit. I mean, I'm the guy who is praising Jesus Christ Vampire Hunter because it has a fucking musical number in it. Come on.
Yeah, that movie's all right. But I mean, where else are you going to see a pinata give a guy a
Jeff's immediately interested.
What I loved the best, though, was them trying to make the pinata look like it was trying to murder people by just moving it around and holding a knife. Like they would just have him scooting down the hallway.
I was going to suggest, let's ask Geoff. Is there any other film we can watch with this scenario?
Where a pinata does that? There's another movie?
If anybody knows, it's Geoff Kane.
I mean, I wouldn't be too scared of a pinata because you need, like, what, a 6-year-old with a good bat grip to take it
He's
down?
a really strong pinata.
Okay, an 8-year-old.
He's really mad because they beat the crap out of his family.
That's what you do to pinata? Never. Okay. I'm never going to see this movie, so it's fine.
It's just called Killer Pinata.
Yes.
Yeah, Killer Pinata.
The Killer Pinata. It's on
All right.
Amazon Prime, and you're welcome.
Oh,
And then you can chase that with like something good, like I recently reviewed Train to Busan. Chase it with that, just kind of.
Or, you know,
Crush the Skull.
the
I like that.
all-time.
Mike didn't like that movie.
Oh, we know. We are aware of how much Mike did not like that movie.
It's like I had a good time.
But I think you could probably follow it up with, the all-time modern classic, The Velocipaster, which is, one of the greatest movies I've ever seen in my life.
What was one of the best scenes?
Okay, it wasn't a good movie, but
I mean, with a name like Velocipaster, you weren't expecting like a Academy Award.
no, I mean, okay, this is hard because like you just have to have seen this movie. I don't know. I guess it's just like.
It's okay, Dan. It's okay.
I don't know. Like the first time he transforms into a raptor, it's like the worst special effects you've ever seen in your life. It was on a $35,000 budget, but it's a prostitute that tells him that he should start killing bad guys as a raptor. He's also an ordained minister.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Well, before we talk about velociraptors coming to your front door to talk about Jesus, I want to take this time to say thank you to everyone for listening to the podcast. Thank you for listening and for subscribing. If you are not a subscriber, then you can find everything Discography Discussion at discussmetal.com. We are on Spotify, Apple and Google Podcasts, TuneIn Radio, Stitcher. So if you have an Amazon Echo or a Google Home, you have no excuse. Ask it to play the latest episode of the Discography Discussion podcast, and it will. We're also on Facebook and on Twitter at Discuss Metal. Be sure to like, favorite, and subscribe. It really helps us out. It lets us know you're listening. And now Dan is going to tell us all about 5-star reviews.
we do love 5-star reviews here on Discography Discussion. And the reason we love them is they make Geoff feel good, even when he's not on the episode. He likes 1-star reviews for when he's not on the episode, but when he's on it, he expects a 5-star. So we got to throw those on there as much as we possibly can. I also would like to take this time to shout out our wonderful patrons. You guys are the guys that make all of our stuff happen. And I just want to, call you all out by name if that's cool. And that would include Alexander, Brian Dean, David Brown, Isaiah Eldridge, Jeffrey De Los Santos,
The Actual Mac,
Jeremy Prince, Josh Moser, Kiki Kuti, Do You Love Me?
I Do Love You,
Lance Allagood,
The King of Metal,
Patrick Asplund, Samuel Woodward, and Tantalized Funyuns. And
Those are
dude, I
some
really hope
fucking
that's
good
on your birth
Funyuns.
certificate.
Dude, that'd be so awesome.
I also hope Kiki Kuti Do You Love Me is also on the birth certificate.
And now Melissa's going to tell us all about the Good Evening Kiddies podcast.
All right, I'll do it again. So there we go.
Do it.
So if you like Tales from the Crypt, feel free to go and check out my podcast, the Good Evening Kiddies podcast. I also do movie reviews that are mostly horror-based on there as well, but I go through all the episodes and movies of Tales from the Crypt. So if you're into that, it's pretty much found anywhere that you get your podcast. There's also a Facebook and a Twitter page you can follow. So yeah, check it out.
And we've all been on there, so
That is
you
true.
have more reason. It's a great podcast. So we're kissing ass, but we mean it for real.
And actually, a lot of the popular episodes are all mostly ones that you guys have been on, a lot of them. So you get a lot of hits on those. So yeah, go check them out.
I'm just saying.
Well, I got to give you credit. It kind of works both ways because our Slipknot episode that you were on is one of the highest rated episodes that we have, most downloaded, and very, very, very talked about by listeners.
There are probably just a lot of maggots out there feeling the
So
pulse.
many maggots. It's so weird, man. Like I'll leave a piece of a piece of fresh meat outside for like 3 days, right in the sunlight, and
Okay.
before I know it, it's full of maggots.
So, Dan, tell me about Taproot.
Well, I'm glad you asked me that, Joe. Taproot. Oh man, where do we want to start with Taproot? We've already talked about how we had Jared on the show, right?
Hey, everybody.
Taproot is they're considered an alternative metal band, but let's be honest, they're a new metal band, or at least they were when they started. We can debate how new metal they stayed throughout their career, but they'd actually been around for quite a while, starting in like 1997, and they'd been around for a few years before they put their debut record out, but they were basically like kind of like a rap metal band, like turntables and stuff when they first started, and that's how they got the attention of Fred Durst of Limp Bizkit, and he was trying to get them a record deal through Interscope Records, and well, that didn't go very well. Because I don't remember what it was, if Fred was like taking too long or what the deal was, but they decided to just kind of look around and see if any other labels were interested, which led to the infamous Fred Durst Taproot voice message.
Which is one of the greatest things of all time.
Yeah.
You boys fucked up.
Yeah, if you could pull that up on YouTube or whatever and play just the audio for it, that would be awesome. We'll wait.
Hey, Fred Durst. Hey, man, you fucked up. You don't ever bite the hand that feeds in this business, bro. And your fucking manager, so that's a fucking idiot, loser motherfucker going nowhere. You just chosen that path. Took you under my wing, brought you to my house. Fucking talked about your ass on radio and press. And you embarrassed like me and the Interscope family. Your association with Limp Bizkit doesn't exist. Your manager slings our name around. He's going to be blackballed and probably be erased. And you will too. He's a fucking idiot. You're going to fucking learn from this time right here. I hope you let your band know that you just fucked yourself. You need to be associated with somebody in this business. You need something to get you out there and put you out there and believe in it. Now you got enemies, and you're fucking yourself already. Tell your friend that. Don't fucking show up at my shows, because if you do, you're going to get fucked. Alright? You and your fucking punk ass, man. You call your fucking manager, David Menezes, whatever. Ask him what he's done and doing. You're a fucking dumb motherfucker. You're learning right now exactly how to ruin your career before it gets started. All the luck, brother. Fuck you.
I feel like there's a threat in there somewhere.
All the love, brother.
Does anybody else feel like Fred's just reading that off of a piece of paper and then at some point he had to improvise but just couldn't pull it off?
He's
Well,
so calm through the whole thing.
Yeah, that's what's creepy about it, kind of.
Yeah.
Well, he was a military guy, so I can see it.
Fred
I can
was?
see that. Yeah, he was in the military.
Really?
Fred Durst.
I am almost positive. I'll have to. Somebody correct me. Now I'm like, oh shit, maybe I said something wrong.
I mean, it's New Metal May. I feel compelled to look this up right now. Oh, he was in the Navy
There we go.
for 2 years. So, I mean,
So that means he can handle the pressure. So that's all I'm saying. So he can stay calm and call him a motherfucker all at the same time.
It reminds me a lot of that clip that was on Significant Other, where he's all like, "My fist, your face. That's where it's going, buddy."
I like to think of it as like he had a cootie catcher that had all the different variations of fucking it, and then he was like, in, out, 6, in, out, 4, opens up, motherfucker. That's what I got to say next. Okay,
All right,
end on that one.
With this podcast not being about Fred Durst, we did that last year. Yeah, that's just completely messed up. Like, if you really think about it, you basically send a demo to what I would assume would have been an idol-like figure at the time. That idol likes your stuff. You guys go, you guys hang out, you guys, form that relationship, and then all of a sudden you go to another state to play a showcase somewhere else, and the dude totally turns on you like an angry cat. I mean, how do you handle something like that?
With class. I think they did a pretty good job. They said they were going to take their time and they were going to find what the right fit was for them, and I mean they did. I think it ended up working out well for them. Did they become the mega superstars that Limp Bizkit is? No. Is it controversial with me saying that I prefer the first 3 albums from Taproot more than anything else from Limp Bizkit?
Oh, you mean the first 3 Taproot albums, Nothing, Mintobi, and Upon Us, released in 1998, 1998, 1999, respectively?
I'm not talking about their indie stuff. I'm talking about, you know what I'm saying.
2000 Gift, and what a gift it was.
Yeah, it was good. It's not my favorite, but it was. This was more the rap rock thing that they had going earlier. Gift had a lot more of that than their subsequent releases did. And so
I don't really hear too much rap rock on this record. I mean, it's more, I would say, alternative rock. There's like 1 or 2 songs that have a little bit of rapping in them. But, I mean, for the most part, it's pretty much just Steven screaming and singing.
I'm probably just thinking, what is it,
Yeah.
That one just keeps getting stuck in my head on this album.
Yeah.
And I like it. It just it's just different for me.
Their earlier releases incorporated a lot more of the rap metal stuff. They had kind of moved. I don't want to say they'd moved on from that at this point, because, I mean, there still is some of it. But this record sounds to me like just an amalgamation of a lot of different bands. Like they did a whole lot of, like, there's a little bit of Korn, a little bit of Limp Bizkit, believe it or not, after all that. And like his vocals sound a little bit like, there's really no nice way to say it, like a whinier, like Incubus type of vocal.
Yeah.
I do think he had a little bit too heavy of a whine on his voice. That does get better later on in their career, but early on, it was always a little much for me. Like, it was just a little too whiny for me, but that's just his singing voice. When it comes to dude's screams, that's
sick.
Where it's at. I mean, high-pitched, throaty growl screams that you really didn't get from very many nu metal records. Korn did it a few times, but Korn, it was more like they used like effects to get that sound. This is all Steven, man. Like, he is shredding those out.
Yeah, a couple songs stuck out for me, definitely. I mean, I definitely remembered that one, because I hadn't listened to a whole lot of Taproot until like Welcome came along.
Yeah.
But like other songs like Smile, Emotional Times, Impact. They also brought forward a couple songs from their EPs, like Mirror's Reflection. They kept bringing, working on a lot, bringing that one up. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't too bad.
Mirror's Reflection's a lot better than the Mirror's Truth. Oof.
To me, this one sounds like the year 2000. The guitars are in drop D. The band's fucking playing power chords, slowed down a little bit. They got some groove. It's not a picture-perfect representation of what nu metal is, but it was definitely in the ballpark of this is what it's going to sound like.
Yeah, I mean, this record is, in Jared's book, Jared Montague's book, he says that, they called the record Gift as it was a gift to all their fans. Because this is more probably the most in the style of their older stuff, and this was the first time that they were taking their sound and putting it like big budget, like out there for the world to see. And I think in that regard, it largely succeeds. This is probably my favorite era of Taproot because there's a darkness to it. that kind of goes away over time. And this song was great. There's a B-side off of this song called Day by Day that they actually just released as a single for some reason on Spotify. But that song Day by Day was the first Taproot song I ever heard, and it was very loud, very screamy. I heard it the first time on the Dracula 2000 soundtrack of all soundtracks. And I was hooked. And then I remember buying this record and being upset because that song wasn't on the record. And I just assumed that it would be. But I definitely still enjoyed the rest of the record because it was very much in the same vein.
Would you believe that soundtrack is actually difficult to find today? It used to be everywhere, but you cannot buy that soundtrack, Amazon or anywhere. It's just not there.
It's behind me somewhere. It was my brother's. I asked him if I could borrow it, and I never gave it back.
Are we ready for Welcome?
Their most successful album.
Oh, yes.
Why would that be, Melissa?
Probably because of Poem.
God damn, it's because of Poem.
It's a solid song.
It is a solid rock song. I feel a predisposed joy towards this record, knowing fully well that Toby Wright had his hands all over the production. But the record opens with Mine. It opens with a very dark, aggressive, but slower paced nu metal song. There's an aspect of nu metal that I would best illustrate as listen to Third Strike. Now, come back over to listen to Taproot. The melody is something that I love in nu metal. I know the general consensus is nu metal is heavy metal with hip-hop vocals, but there's also melodies in there. And this gives me an old school Korn vibe of John Davis before the Choir of Johns.
Yeah, so when I heard Mine for the first time, I freaked out because I'm a huge harmony guy, and I was like, this is exactly what I'm looking for as a replacement, because I still am a huge God Lives Underwater fan. I was a huge Alice in Chains fan. And one of the big reasons why I love both of those bands still is the vocal harmonies and how haunting they are. And if Mine is in the same vein, and I love it. It is probably my favorite Taproot song is Mine. I seriously, as I was waiting, because I had everything set up for Discord and we switched over to Skype while I was waiting for you guys after I got it set up, I seriously listened to that song like 3 or 4 times in a row just because I love it that much. It is one of my favorite songs of this era and of this genre. I never get tired of it. Ever. And I can't tell. I've listened to that song thousands of times, and I drive my house nuts, everybody that lives with me, because I sing it all the time. And they're like, dude, give it a rest. I'm like, I can't. I love the song too much.
I was glad to hear you mention Alice in Chains. I definitely heard that a little bit, especially in the song Myself. Was another one that I kind of reminded me of a little bit of that. I do like the drumming in this album a lot. There's a lot of cymbal work that I can appreciate.
Absolutely.
That's our boy Jared.
When we did talk to Jared Montague, and Toby Wright pretty much confirmed it when we talked to him at Rockin' Pod a few years ago, Jared nearly lost his job as the drummer for Taproot on the record Welcome. And Jared busted his ass, got his licks in shape, and what you have is some of his most intense grooves. Even though he is arguably a more paced player. He's not doing a ton of tricks or trying to show off the best licks in the room. He's trying to play the fucking beat, but he's trying to do it in a way that makes it interesting to me. And sometimes you just got to lean back and let the pace of the song lead the groove, instead of just playing straight double bass and hit the snare drum and see what happens. I like that too, though.
I think this album is about 3% nu metal and about 97% mid-2000s alternative rock.
And I happen to like the
Geoff
mid-2000s. Yeah, dude, this is right up my alley, man. I love this album.
It's not up mine as much. Yeah, sure, Steven screams on it a little bit. I like his screaming, but like I can go listen to other bands that scream like that the entire time and be happy. So that's not my main gripe. My main gripe is just that compared to compared to Gift, that record was really all over the place as far as composition goes. A lot of different elements working their way in and out of the songs. This record is outrageously formulaic in comparison to that. Every song starts, you get basically, a song can start softer. It can start with, a couple of banging riffs, but ultimately you're going to get 15 to 20 seconds into the song. Everything's going to drop out, and then Steven's going to come in clean. And it's frustrating.
It did happen quite a bit.
Not quite a bit, on almost every single song.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's more the formula than it isn't the formula.
Well, that's because they're on a major label that is looking for the formula, and they are with the formula master who does it better than just about anybody else in rock and metal as far when it comes to production. So, I mean, this is music for the masses, and this is not music for Dan.
It bums me out because the first one very much was that.
Right, and I understand.
And for it to be that drastic of a shift, a lot of bands take 2 or 3 albums to get to this point. This was just like immediate. And I know, like, after reading Jared's book, that like they had thrown out tons and tons and tons of ideas. They probably had a completely different album, in the can, ready to record before Toby came in and was like, no, this ain't gonna work. I love the screaming on Gift a lot. This record, I guess I like it, but it's so it's almost like whenever they need to scream, somebody's just hitting a button on the computer that says, okay, scream right here. It's like the screaming is so minimalized and so buried in the mix of these songs that they might as well not even be there. Like,
and that's why
the ingredients. It takes the main ingredient. The thing that I liked the most out of the band was the unpredictability. Like Day by Day, you go back and listen to that song, and it starts off with him like yell rapping, like very emotional, and then like a second later, he's in this like ball busting, just intense, deep, guttural, animalistic scream. You put that song next to a song like Poem, it's not even the same band, even though it is.
Yeah, this is going to be one of those times where I actually thoroughly enjoy the softer side of a band, and that almost never happens whenever we do these reviews. It's most of the time I'm in Dan's corner 98% of the time, but this is going to be one of the very few times where I'm going to say that I actually like the mainstream version of this band a ton. I like the alt rock version of Taproot. I love the alt rock version of. Let me say that again. Sorry. I love the alt rock version of Taproot. I think it's amazing for a radio play friendly music. This is perfect for me.
You're not alone in that. I'm a fan of good songs, entertaining songs, simple songs sometimes. I don't think that Taproot called up Toby Wright and said, we want our record to sound like Alice in Chains. So Toby would just add a shit ton of layers and harmonies to make them sound kind of like Lane Staley and Jerry Cantrell. I think if you're going to call up the guy that gets credit for making Alice in Chains on tape sound like Alice in Chains, you're going to get a piece of that in your music. There is a certain quality to laid back, melodic alternative rock music of this type that just sounds like two guys could be playing it with acoustic guitars and singing into microphones at the coffee shop stage. Depending on what day it is, Dan hates that. He absolutely hates that. Depending on the band, if it can be played with one guitar and 2 vocals, Dan hates it, needs it to be a little more complex than that. And I'm sure there's a piece of this that is so simple, Dan says, if I wanted to listen to this, I would just listen to Godsmack.
No, I'd probably still listen to this.
Joe just wants you to listen to Godsmack.
There's not as much macho tough guy crap in this as there is in Godsmack. You guys say all that, like good songs and all that, and I don't want people to think that I'm saying that Welcome is a bad record or that the material on it is not good, but it is extremely formulaic. And I can understand why there were probably some people that bought this CD thinking like, oh, every song's going to be like Poem. And they were right. That's not a bad thing. When I bought Linkin Park's Hybrid Theory and every song sounded like One Step Closer, I was fine with that. But I think with the case of Taproot, I got so emotionally attached to Gift and those songs and that level of aggression and darkness. And this is like, if just looking at the cover of the record where it's like a one ray of light shining through a dark room, and then you look at the cover of Gift, which is like all two hands out in only darkness. There is a little bit of a light shining through there too. Like the covers are intentionally very similar to each other. Gift is a sincere record written by a bunch of guys that had real feelings and everything like that. Welcome is an approximation of that, with a whole team of people trying to find what was special about the first record.
And recording with Toby Wright, so you're going to get the singles treatment for every single song. We don't necessarily know which song is going to take the radio world by storm, but it's going to be one of these. It just happened to be Poem. That was the one they picked. And mine shortly after that. You're welcome, Geoff.
Yes, thank you. So what says you, Melissa? What is your feeling on that? I know Dan and I have kind of beat a dead horse to death, but you want in on the action?
On the album, just as a whole? I mean, there's a reason it's the most successful album, by following the algorithms that you use to build a lot of radio-friendly songs, things like that. I mean, a couple other songs that kind of stood out to me were like Fault and Everything, Remain. This is definitely the album I heard most of. Like, my brother had this album, so that's how, like, as I was going through these, I was like, oh yeah, that's right. Okay, yeah. Because I knew Taproot. I just didn't get as deep into them probably after Blue Sky Research. It didn't, I kind of dropped off, but yeah.
Yeah, you weren't the only one.
2005, Daydreaming. I'm sorry, Blue Sky Research.
All right, Dan, go ahead and shit on it. Let's hear it.
I'm gonna blow your guys' minds right now. I like this record a lot more than I like Welcome.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it because it's trippy as fuck and it kind of scratches the Incubus itch?
It does a little bit more. What I like about this record is every single song on it doesn't sound the same. I like that this record was a pains. I mean, I read Jared's book, True Rock Stars, about the creation of this album and how hard it was that the record label wanted another Poem. They didn't get that on Blue Sky Research. They got a much more subdued band. And it's not to say that there aren't a couple of like heavier songs on it, but it's like heavier, slower, mellow music. It's still thick, and I actually do think it's thicker. I think the heavier parts actually punch harder than they've punched since the first album. And it's just overall a more honest musical delivery than what we'd gotten on Welcome.
I would say they wanted another Poem, but what they got instead was a fucking masterpiece.
You love this?
I love this album. Love it, love it, love it, love it. It is so many layers. It's beautiful. I think it is criminally underrated. And I have to say, shame on you, Atlantic, for doing everything you could to derail and destroy this album and this band, because this is an epic release. And to me, I think it's some of Toby Wright's best work as well. I love this album. I think this is from that time. This is from the mid 2000s. This is one of my favorite albums from the mid 2000s, hands down. I love it.
It makes sense that they tried to kill it. When you have a band that gives you the #1 song of the year, you've officially typecast that band. They didn't typecast themselves. They were just hanging out with Toby Wright, making the best record they could. So now they have an idea for something new, which is not an entire record of poems, pardon the pun. Of course you're going to shit on that, because they're not giving you what you're expecting. It's the definition of, why can't you guys just write another poem? We can go make a shit ton of money. Yeah, but we don't want to do that. We want to put out this almost experimental journey. I feel like the title Blue Sky Research is almost prophetic in that way. It's like, if you look up at the sky, what do you see or what do you hear? Well, you're going to hear a lot of random shit that might make you feel a different way than just listening to Poem and dancing for 20 minutes.
So what do you? And this record is overall much more sincere than Welcome was. Steven's his singing voice is 175% improved over what it was on the first two records.
That's an awfully specific percentage, sir.
Well, I try to be concise. I try to be clear. This is obviously not a go-to record for me in the sense that, like, I'm not just going to pop it on and listen to it. But when I'm listening to this band's albums in a week and I'm comparing and contrasting just how they're making me feel, this was kind of a breath of fresh air after listening to Gift, which was awesome, and then listening to Welcome, which was like a not good version of that first record, and then. But then you get to this and it's something totally different. So it's like a palate cleanser. I don't go into this with some preconceived expectation. I mean, I can tell you what my expectation was going in. Oh God, if they make this more formulaic than Welcome, I'm out. I'm going to call Joe. I'm going to tell him we're not doing the episode. It's over. I'm not doing it. Because it's just going to be nothing but negativity throughout. And I was very pleasantly surprised by this. And it kind of hits me. It kind of hits me a little bit in my emo vibes. It's not an emo record at all. I don't want to set anyone off. But it's more emotional. It has more feeling to it, and they're able to achieve that for me without having to scream their guts out the entire time.
Word. Now this album, like. Well, for one, I think it's their longest album, time-wise. So, I mean, I was actually a little surprised on how long a lot of these albums are. They're at least every one of them is like a solid 40 minutes or more, which seems like it would be shorter with this kind of band, but maybe that's just me. But there were at least 4 songs that popped out for me on this one. So Eager, I thought was pretty good. Promise, Lost in the Woods, and I Will Not Fall for You. I thought that one was pretty good too. But yeah, I mean, I find some of the vocals on some of the albums previously like a bit monotone and draggy, but I mean, maybe that's what they're going for.
I think that was their thing.
Yeah.
I understand if you're working with Toby Wright and he's pushing you to write these harmonized choruses, you may not come in the room with the best melodies if you needed help with that. And when you've just got a driving guitar riff with a straight backbeat, you kind of get stuck in the rhythm of the verse instead of the melody of the verse. So this one definitely sounds like they learned something. Gentlemen and lady, are we ready to jump in the car and take a trip, our long road home, 2008?
I brought snacks.
Sweet.
There it is.
I got beef jerky. Beef jerky, good.
And say whatever
Granola
to get our
pants.
mind off of it.
You're not a fan of this one, Jeff?
It's okay, but it's not fair to the album itself because I hold Blue Sky Research in such high esteem that it's probably my fault and how much I love the previous release. No matter what they did, their follow-up to me probably just was not going to be as good just because of what I loved on the previous release. And then the biggest thing for me was those vocal harmonies started to disappear on this one, and that is one of the things that I loved the most about the earlier releases from Taproot. So yeah, it was a disappointment for me because I was looking forward to, well, it's my mistake for looking for more of the same, because that's always what I preach against. But I liked so much what they did prior that I was hoping for more of it, and I didn't get it.
This record takes more of a swing back towards being a little heavy. Well, I don't want to say heavier, but faster, a little bit more sing-songy, a little bit more rocky. You know, they're fully cemented as basically just a hard rock band at this point in their career. They're not trying to be metal. They're not trying to be super aggressive. Get a couple screams here and there on some songs, but for the most part, that we're straight up into just hard rock territory. Think Octane on Sirius satellite radio, that's this record. Now, what's interesting too is as mainstream as it sounds, this was kind of their first album that they released independently. And I think Sony, or no, it wasn't Sony, it was Red Distribution put this out, or they distributed it everywhere. But so they've gone back to being an independent band at this point because things really went south with Atlantic after Blue Sky Research, understandably. And this record again, this is not my genre of music. I don't like super repetitive choruses and things like that. But I can't really fault the band themselves for being that way, because in a certain sense they've kind of let's put it this way, they've been that way longer than they haven't been that way. So I'm not like super bummed about that. I don't love the record by any means, but this was, I felt like, kind of a step more back in the right direction for them. It's a little bit more comfortable of a sound, I think. It's not as good as Blue Sky, like even a little bit. And I think that's one of my issues with it is just like, you guys had something really cool here. It would have been cool to see you guys try to explore that, over the course of a couple more records.
See, I went through and I checked out some of the EPs before this, like Minto and Something More Than Nothing. And as these albums go on, what I've noticed definitely is it seems like there's less effects used throughout the albums. Like in the beginning, which I get when I was in a band in my first, you're young and you're like, how much effects? I have all of them. I'll throw them all on my song. And so that's changed. The bass seems less chunky to me in this album. I like the song You're Not Home Tonight and Take It wasn't too bad. It reminded me a little bit of like Rage Against the Machine or like maybe POD kind of influences on that. So, but no, I mean, it was all right. Like, again, I'm kind of like you, Dan, a little bit where this isn't exactly my cup of tea, but I can find certain little highlights in each album.
Is it unfair to say that it sounds like a band who had a record deal and then didn't, but still tried to put out a record? Is that fair?
Maybe.
In some ways, it just sounds like they had to do something because if we don't, we won't be able to eat tomorrow. There's an entirely different experience between Songs to Burn Your Bridges by Project 86 and the one that was put out on the major label after they were re-signed.
There's at least a 3-year gap between this and their previous album. I mean...
Well, it took a long time to get home.
It was a really long road.
It was a very long road to get home.
Yeah, I think part of that was I think there was some sort of squabble to finally get released from Atlantic because Atlantic essentially was burying them.
They were shelved. Yeah. They're like, okay, whatever. We might put your record out or we might do this or we might let you guys do another one or, something like that. But that's just what labels do to bands that piss them off, basically.
Yeah, so it was the politics of the industry that I think had them sidelined for as long as they were. So, because I know they had a ton of material because they wrote for Blue Sky Research. They wrote like almost 100 songs for that. I mean, it was just a crazy amount that they wrote.
Now, how many of those songs do you think ended up here?
I don't know. I genuinely don't know, but I know that they wrote just an obscene amount of music in preparation for Blue Sky Research. And I would not be surprised if some of that found its way here. I wouldn't be surprised at all because, I mean, how can you not use all of that material unless for some reason Atlantic had rights to all of that?
Right.
Because that's prolific. That's insane that you write that much for an album and not be able to use it.
Yeah, you don't hear that too often, that a band would have written that many times or that many songs and then been told no that many times. So I mean, it's different for sure.
But yeah, I mean, it's not like it's a bad album. I'm not gonna. It's not gonna be one of these times where I'm shitting on a group like I've done in the past. It's just not as good as the previous efforts. And sometimes I wonder, is that because, the magic producer that was the wizard that did everything with them before isn't there? Or if this is, because they get to call a little bit more of their own shots. I mean, combination thereof, that's the kind of stuff that, does Jared, unfortunately, I have not read the book. I don't get a chance to read much anymore unless it's
okay,
on audiobook.
We know you can't read. It's okay.
Yeah, I do everything on audiobook. But does he talk about that at all?
Not really. I mean, I haven't read the book since we had him on.
Okay, so
and even then, before we had him on, I read like a little bit of the book, and then I ended up ordering the hard copy. So I mean, it's been a solid 2 years since probably I've read that. Okay. And I've talked to so many band members now since then. I could be getting some of my facts jumbled up in my head, but I think this record was fine, and I think that it was at least good enough to keep people interested in Taproot, and it's a little bit more upbeat. So, like the people that hated Blue Sky Research, they might have been able to jump back on for this kind of record. Stylistically, it's not that different from Welcome. I think it's a lot more interesting overall musically than Welcome was, but that's not saying much after what I said about that record. But it's not going to hook me but it's going to hook your general rock fans. Are going to be like, oh yeah, Taproot, I remember them. They had that song, Poem. Yeah, they're cool. You know what I mean? And they could have been selling albums just off that. But I feel like they're kind of in a transitional period here where they're like, do we go back to heavy, or do we, keep going in our more alt rock direction, which is what I think makes Plead the Fifth such an interesting record.
2010.
Plead the Fifth starts off with Now Rise, and it's a banger. And at first, I thought I clicked on the wrong band because it's heavy, but it doesn't really sound like Taproot. Did you guys hear that a little bit? It starts off with some yelling. It's not until about, 30 seconds or so into the song, or 20 seconds in or whatever, that Steven's voice kicks in, and then they become recognizable again.
Well, I mean, they do have a new drummer in this album, right? This is when the new guy showed up, so maybe they're trying to mix it up a little bit.
Well, they kind of have to, because the guy who was doing the backing vocals before was also the drummer, and that's Jared, who we've been talking about. We can so for choruses and stuff like that, there was a marked change as compared to previous materials, and that's just simply because of personnel change. That just happens. That's just the way that it is. But I didn't realize how, besides Toby Wright, I didn't realize how important Jared was to the sound, because his voice, his vocals work so well against Stevens. I didn't realize that's until I actually started doing this episode. I didn't realize that was actually Jared that was doing most of the backing vocals. I'm sure a lot of that was Stevens' voice being layered as well. But the harmonizing just is not there like I would like it to be. And that was one of the things that always drew me into what I view as quote unquote classic Taproot. And that's just, it's gone. And that happens, bands grow, bands change, and sometimes personnel also changes. And that's the case here. It's a solid album. I actually, and besides, wishing and reminiscing about the previous vocals, the rest of the album I actually really like, and it is because it's a heavier album. Just like Dan said, I like it. I don't think there's really anything wrong with it at all.
Yeah, it's heavier. It's not quite nu metal, but it's, for 2010, it falls into that category. I don't know if anybody's ever really made a category for this. I guess it's just alternative metal, right? But it occupies the same space as bands like Nonpoint and Seven Dust. These types of bands that are widely considered to be hard bands, quote unquote, but they're for fans that if somebody just gets up, you show somebody that listens to bands like this, Living Sacrifice, you lose them because it's so over the top in comparison. But for the people that listen to Korn and Limp Bizkit, and maybe even dabbled in some Slipknot and Mudvayne over the years, the old school nu metal fans, these are the kind of bands that they're still listening to, and they're still, it's keeping them vibrant, because everybody always talks about how nu metal died and the whole scene died or whatever. It didn't really die. It changed a little bit, but the fans are still there for it. When these bands announce tours, everybody jumps out there.
That's one of the main reasons it's starting to come back.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, please go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say that. Like I was saying about the new drummer. I drum, so it always kind of stands out to me a little bit. There definitely, there's a bit of a difference. There was a little more kick, a little more kick drum to the way he drums instead of less cymbal work, which is kind of how I play a little more. I'm a little heavy-footed when I play, but
yeah, you are.
No, but no, I really did like the song "Fractured." Everything I Said Was True, and then I really liked "Release Me." That was one that I was like, all right, let's jam.
Release me.
Yeah, Fractured was definitely there. Fractured, everything I said was true. And that was actually that was the lead single and what got them noticed again. So I thought it was a great album.
Yeah.
The only complaint that I really had was just it was a different vocal approach. That was really the biggest difference for me. Outside of that, I thought it was a great album.
Do we know that it was the personnel change, or was this another Brandon Boyd situation where one record he just sounded different?
Well, the harmonies aren't the same, obviously. But yeah, I think his approach is different overall.
Yeah, so it's twofold.
I mean, obviously the harmonies aren't there like they were before, but he also doesn't, it's not just like his sing voice and then his scream voice. Like there's like a lot of like yelling and talking, no rapping or whatever, but it's a more loose vocal approach, I think, than he'd ever done before.
I just love the riffs. I love the bottom heavy riffage that it's the same thing that Seven Dust and Cold Chamber and Korn did forever and still do. It's what can I do with the bottom 3 strings if I tune them down to C? How much heavy dirge can I make with that? And I love that. I don't want to be a lead guitar player. I want to be a rhythm guitar player so I can play shit like that. And I still do. So for me, this is like we took Gift and Welcome and threw them together and made a new record that didn't sound like Blue Sky Research. Nothing wrong with that record, but if you're a fan of those classic Taproot records, you're probably back on board with this one.
Mostly.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly.
I'm mostly on board. I'm mostly on board with it. I think it was probably definitely sold as a return to form. Anytime a band that was heavy and then went a little bit softer, the second somebody writes a beefy riff, immediately stickers start getting printed that say a return to form. And I think for the most part it is that. But they also keep all the stuff that they've learned on the way there in mind. So their hooks are hookier. Their songwriting overall is more appealing maybe than it was. Like it would be more appealing to the average listener than maybe something off of Gift would have been. Because, you take a record like Gift, as much as I praise it, if you show it to somebody that's never heard Korn before, they don't get it, But I feel like these newer albums, they throw some of that heaviness in there, but they write it in such a way to where they could even just be a gateway into harder music for people that haven't heard it before.
2012, The Episodes. Every time I see this fucking record cover, I think I'm listening to Kidney Thieves by accident. It just has that look, man. And I'm blind, so it's my fault.
The Episodes, man. If there's something that I'm always stressed out about on a weekly basis, it's the Episodes.
I'm guessing Dan doesn't care for this one.
I didn't quite get on it either too much, so it's all you.
Yeah, I didn't care for it either. I think this is going to be, unless Joe has something different to say, it might be a clean sweep that we just didn't care for it at all. This was, for me, by far my least favorite album of theirs, and it's not even close. I was thoroughly disappointed in this release, but
I just don't know really what the goal was. I don't know. It's got traces of the old album, and I've used this comparison to Death, over the 160 whatever episodes we've done here, no pun intended. The last album was actually pretty great and was like, yeah, dude, Taproot, they've still got it. Like, I can't wait to see what they have coming up next. Or they put this out and you're like, oh yeah, this is the band that put out Welcome after they put out Gift. It's one of they're kind of one of those bands, and that like every other record's a winner. And the stuff in between, like maybe this is why you need 120 songs before you can settle on a Blue Sky Research. I think they're creative. I think they come up with a lot of good ideas, but I don't think that all of the ideas are good, and I don't think it's always a hit, This record is like, yeah, we've got all the same ingredients that we had on the last one, but just the ideas aren't there. They're not as compelling. It's not like it sounds bad or they tried to do something really weird or crazy or something that just, I don't know, man. This, like, it sounds like a weird mixture of like Plead the Fifth and Blue Sky Research with none of the stuff that made those records good.
Once there was a band called Panic at the Disco, and they had a style of music that was very theatrical in nature. It almost sounded like burlesque. That's what everybody said. Then they put out a record that kind of sounded like the Beatles, that they recorded at Abbey Road Studios, and everybody liked it. Then they did the burlesque thing again. Then they started hanging out with the guy who produced the Fall Out Boy records that basically sounded like R&B albums. And then Panic at the Disco sounded like R&B for the next two records. This is the first time, and it took 12 years for the band to really sound like they had a budget, but the band is still writing the same songs. They just spent all the money on the producer to layer it up and put vocals on the left and the right and over-process everything and just create too much layers of shit that doesn't actually go anywhere. This should be the record I heard in 2005, 2008. Not saying those records were bad, but after Welcome and Gift and even Plead the Fifth, the band still sounded alt metal. They still sounded like a heavy band that was writing melodic songs. There weren't 17,000 layers of shit to listen to. But now you have to listen to all these little things that are going on and try to decipher what the song is actually about. It's not like Blue Sky Research, where every song was different. It had its own identity. This one just throws elements at you and expects it to be better because they put more time into it and made it sound different.
This sounds like we really loved Deftones, and we loved the experimentation that Deftones started to incorporate into their music. We need a big, sweeping, atmospheric, Deftones-y type of record. And, it's not great. Around the Bend was kind of a cool song, but not really.
This is one of those things where some of the bands make the transition, some of them don't. I mean, I really can't put it any other way than that. I mean, we were talking about, Deftones making the switch, but we've listened to other bands, make the switch, like Catatonia, and stuff like that, where, but it just didn't work. Since Dan's he ragged on me about the Mirror's Truth earlier, which I actually like that one by In Flames, but In Flames made the transition, and we don't think they work either. I mean, it doesn't work for every band, and this is a situation where it faltered, and I think there's a reason. I know they've done some reunion shows, and they've done a little bit here and there, for anniversaries and special occasions, but effectively there's not Taproot anymore.
They're really not. I don't know what this is, if it's just like Steven Richards solo music, and it's just like, well, Taproot, that's my band, so I'm gonna just tour under the name Taproot. I don't know. I really can't put my finger on it. It's not even like terrible. It's not like I want to puke whenever I hear it or anything. It's just they've just done better in the past. I wish I had something more interesting to say about it, but I don't. It's just this is just kind of a skipper. You just want to skip this one. And that was 8 years ago, though. So I mean, who knows how many hundreds of songs she's written since then.
Final thoughts on Taproot, Melissa.
Okay, you guys ready?
I am locked and loaded.
All right, so
page 1.
Yeah, let me get all my notes. So the whole time I was listening to this band, it's a solid band for what they do, for what they play. But for me, I can't find it that memorable. For me, it really didn't stand out that much at all to where I would go back and listen to it. If I wanted to, I would just go listen to the other bands that I think they sound like, which isn't necessarily bad. It's not like they aren't shitty or anything. Like they can play. It just didn't really feel that like I'm not sure what the word is, but so I made a burrito out of it. So if you take Taproot, if Taproot was a burrito, so here's what they're made of. So you got
hungry right now.
You got like a 311 tortilla, right? So 311 is the tortilla.
Yes.
And then you fill it up with some Limp Biscuit, some Incubus filling, and you wrap that up, and then you sprinkle little cheese and salsa that kind of look like corn on top of that. So you got like a combination of those four, maybe put it on a plate of Alice in Chains. I don't know. But so it was like all these other bands that it just kept reminding me of, but nothing that made them really seem to stand out to me that I'd be like, oh, this is Taproot. But I mean, maybe I just didn't hear it enough growing up. It just, but for me, it was like, they're fine. But it's like, would I listen to it again? Probably not. So that's how I feel.
I love everything about this metaphor except for the Limp Biscuit inside the tortilla.
Would you rather be in the salsa? Or maybe on the plate, since he got them started.
There it is.
At least if it's on the plate, I can kind of avoid it if I don't want to.
You can dip it in.
Yeah.
It's the gravy.
Okay.
Biscuits and gravy.
Thank you, Geoff, for finally biting onto that. Geoff, what about you?
So, for me, this is absolutely what might have been type of situation, because I know I'm in the minority, and critically speaking, I'm also in the minority with Blue Sky Research. I thought that this could have been the path to stardom for a more sonically layered and progressive sound. Obviously, that doesn't sell records, though. I get that, but for me, it was a damn near masterpiece. And just watching what happened to them after that, for me, it genuinely is depressing, because it shows what happens whenever you don't do what the record label wants, and the politics that goes with it, and how it can destroy a career. Because I think that played a huge part in their downfall was the politics aspect of it, unfortunately. So for me, looking back, it's always been the what might have been, because I'm absolutely in love with that album, and I kind of get a bit of a bittersweet feeling anytime I talk about Taproot, anytime I listen to their music, because that's exactly where I go, is to what might have been, because I love that album that much.
Final thoughts on Taproot. Discuss Metal, Dan.
Well, there hasn't really been a whole lot of metal to discuss in this episode, but Taproot has always been kind of a pleasant memory for me. Like I said, I remember hearing the Day by Day song on the Dracula soundtrack and being like, dude, this band Taproot's like the coolest thing I've ever heard in my life. This is pre-Zao me, and so, I really liked that about it. And then I got the album. I really loved the album. And I haven't been super stoked about anything else overall. And it's not that I think that they're... sorry, I got distracted by something. I'm sorry. But no, I really got into the album, and I really wasn't stoked about really anything else. Blue Sky Research surprised me during this listen. I didn't think that I was going to love that one, but I ended up really liking it. And I guess all in all, Taproot's just not a band for me. I understand the appeal, but if you're looking for a band that is dynamic and entertaining and can write some songs that'll really stick in your head, Taproot's that band. Unfortunately, I feel like they just never took it to the next level.
I think Taproot is a memory of that band that you heard on the radio, and you maybe didn't know what their name was, but you recognized the song. And when you heard it, you thought, yeah, that's a good song. There are countless bands that you can put the CD on your shelf, and you're not going to listen to them every single day, but you have that thought 1 year from now, maybe 2, of what was that song, or what was that record? It was kind of cool. It had a song on it called Superhero Motherfucking Superman. And then you put that record in and you listen to it. I think Taproot is a band that we remember because they wrote a number 1 single. But we don't want to call them a one-hit wonder because they have so many records. And they have records that we like. It's just, there just isn't one label that you can put on this band and say, yes, this is where they stand in the history of nu metal or alt rock or alt metal. I can't say that all of it is worth listening to, but I definitely think there are some gems. And unfortunately, if you skip the last record, you're going to be holding most of those gems. Dan, what's your album of the week?
My album of the week is Throwing a Wrench in the American Music Machine by Training for Utopia.
Nice.
It's a good one.
Yes, it is. As I say, that's a little harder than where I'm going. As we hear Joe tapping away.
140 words a minute. Jeff, what about you?
Ultra by Depeche Mode.
Good call.
Dude, I was talking to Clank the other night, and we probably spent 40 minutes talking about God Lives Underwater and Depeche Mode.
Oh, fuck you, dude. You told me about the God Lives Underwater part, but Depeche Mode too. Why did you call me?
It wasn't. I mean, I guess we could have called you, but we just didn't.
Yes.
Because I was like, oh man, do you think we should call Geoff? And Clank's like, no, I hate that guy. And so it just went that way.
Well, he's not the only one.
I'm kidding.
It's okay.
He loves you.
I know.
Melissa from the Good Evening Kiddies podcast. What is your album of the week?
I'm going to go a little back in time, get a little more trippy. I'm going to go with 1967 Surrealistic Pillow by Jefferson Airplane.
Ooh.
Nice.
That was before they were a starship.
That starship just crashed.
Yeah, that was the 80s of crap. But no, the 60s, now we're talking.
Yeah.
Grace was amazing back then.
For me, it's the newest record by Rammstein.
What are they singing about now?
Who knows?
Hey, my oldest is taking German. He could tell us.
I don't know if I want to know.
Yeah.
You know what's funny is that one of his good friends, that kid's parents, they go to all kinds of Rammstein shows. Say it's the best live show that you've ever seen.
It is a cool live show. I haven't seen it in person, but I've seen videos, and it is entertaining. It's just like some of the stuff though, like okay, just I get it. You like to bang ladies. That's fine. Just
yeah, I mean it's kind of like the same thing you hear about with Gore and Ghost. It's all about the stage presence. Rammstein is definitely one of those bands. But what's funny is that Joe and I's, both of our bands are baritones, nice deep vocals.
All right.
I love that part, and that's just not a normal. That's kind of counterculture because the tenors and the high pitched vocals always get the accolades, but I love baritones.
So you're like Freddie Mercury.
Oh, he can sing
question. It's a trick question.
No, it's not. Freddie was scientifically a baritone.
Yep, an amazing range.
And he was very talented.
He liked cats, and if you like cats,
yes.
My podcast cat, Gus, has an Instagram.
Oh, does he really?
Yeah, I just started one for him now that we moved to an apartment since he's becoming a permanent indoor cat. So it's under a sweet cat named Gus, and so you can follow him on there, and sometimes he's on there helping me with the podcast and things like that.
That's awesome.
It's mostly him just kind of hanging out.
What kind of phone does he have?
I gave him my old LG. I mean, I'm not going to buy him a new one. They always end up breaking them. You know how kids are.
Cats, yeah, they're terrible.
Dropping them in the litter box and all that stuff.
Yep.
Take us out, DFT.
If you've ever been listening to this show and thought to yourselves, man, why are they talking about Taproot? I want them to talk about this other band that they probably don't know about or whatever. You can reach out to us. I can't read your mind. I don't know what bands you want me to talk about. I'm just here to talk about bands. So what you have to do is you have to get a hold of us. There's a few different ways that you can do that. You can reach out to us on Facebook under Discography Discussion, on Twitter at discussmetal. You can send us an old-fashioned email at danandjoeshow@gmail.com. We also have a Discord server that you can join if you click on the link in the show notes. And if you want to get yourself some really, really, really sweet Discography Discussion merch, you can do that at our Teespring store, which is also in the show notes. I guess long story short, read the show notes.
Read? What's that?
Read the notes. Are you talking to me?
And on that note, this has been episode 167 of Discography Discussion. Thank you for listening. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at discussmetal. Subscribe to our podcast everywhere you listen to podcasts, including Google Play, Apple Podcasts, and Stitcher. Visit discussmetal.com for all things discography discussion. And please send questions and comments to danandjoeshow@gmail.com. If you are not a patron, you can become one at patreon.com/discussmetal. We have some sweet perks.
Give me your fucking money, motherfucker.
Cha-ching!
Please? Pretty please?
$1 a month gets you into that exclusive album review feed.